Good evening on this Monday. Thank you for joining us for this Facebook Live. We have a really interesting conversation in store for you. So we're going to be digging a little deeper into a family secret. And for decades, Yael Humphreys and her daughter Zahara Washington believe their matriarch died from kidney disease. And they're joining us right now because we're going to talk a bit more about their family story. Zahara and Yael, thanks for joining me tonight.
Hi, thanks for having us.
It's good to see you.
Happy
It's
to
good
be
to
here.
see you. So, 2 years ago, you learned the truth about your matriarch, Gertrude Hargett. And it wasn't that she had kidney disease, it was that she died from an illegal abortion at the time. And we shared this story back in October, but we thought it might be timely to talk a bit more about this journey because reproductive rights are on the minds of people across the nation on the eve of Election Day. And we thought this would be a really interesting conversation to kind of dig back into. So if you're just joining us, we're going to go ahead and share Gertie's story with you, and then we're going to talk about it some more with Yael and Zahara. So let's roll the story.
Everyone says, I remind them of her. She loved heels, as I love to wear heels, loved to dress, and that's my mom when she was a baby.
Yael Humphreys
This is my mom when she graduated from high school.
had so little time to get to know her mother, Gertrude. She was just 9 when her mother died in a New Jersey hospital room.
I remember my grandfather coming to the school to get me out of school early. When I got home, they told me that she passed away.
Gertrude and Yael's father, Ernest, married out of high school.
This is me at 9.
And by age 20,
My brother, Ernest.
they had 2 small children.
When I met her, I found that she's real fun-loving and she liked to laugh and tell jokes. She just had a beautiful personality.
92-year-old Mildred Taylor Morrison was one of Gertie's dear friends.
Their marriage was kind of rocky, but she was hanging in there for her children.
Gertie's husband Ernest was a Marine. It was hard to make ends meet, but by age 29, there was about to be even more pressure on their marriage and their finances.
I remember her coming to me and telling me she was pregnant and that she did not want to bring another child into the world. The marriage was rocky, and also they could not afford another child. She just felt that she just had to do it. She had no other choice.
Did she ask you to keep this secret?
Oh, definitely.
In 1963, abortion was against the law. Women seeking to end unwanted pregnancies were forced into dangerous situations. Right after Gertie's procedure, Millie says she spiked a fever, endured soaring pain, and ended up in the hospital. Not long after her abortion, Gertie's organs shut down.
When you learned that Gertie lost her life,
I was devastated that I was not able to talk her out of it.
I was told that my mother died from kidney failure, and she was on dialysis.
Happy birthday, Aunt Millie.
That all changed in 2020 at Millie's 90th birthday party.
We had a glass of wine, and her daughter says, Mom, I think you need to tell Yael your secret.
It wasn't an easy thing for me to do.
She told me that my mom had an abortion and got really, really sick, and she died. I said to her, no, my mom, she had kidney failure. And she says, no.
I told her, no, that is not true. It was because of the abortion that she had. She got the yellow jaundice because the tools that they used was not clean.
All these years, I was really concerned about my kidneys. So when Aunt Millie told me something different, I was like, oh, God, I don't have to worry about that no more.
I think we both just sat with it for a while and, wow.
When Roe v. Wade was overturned this past summer, Yael and her daughter Zahara were compelled to do something to honor their matriarch and protect other women's reproductive rights.
I'm a mother of 3, but, it was a thought to go to 3, right? And it was my choice to go to 3. To think about being a woman in the circumstances that my grandmother was, we wanted to empower those women to take back agency over that decision.
They turned their nonprofit Glue Foundation, the G is for Gertrude, into an organization with a singular focus serving Black women who need abortion care.
Where's your book bag so I can see your homework?
And they've chosen to bring Gertrude's story out of hiding.
Tell me about your school day.
That's good.
And to embrace this new revelation that helps them see not just what they lost, but what they've gained.
Yael has her mom's smile.
Yeah, I do.
And she sounds like her mother.
Yeah, so you say, so you say.
I think it's important for stories to be told in their fullness.
They spoke so highly of her all my life. It was just like that little thing they just forgot to tell me. And I don't think it would have made a difference if I knew then the truth.
So we're back now and talking with Yael Humphreys and Zahara Washington about their family story. And we end the story, Yael, with you talking about the truth and how you didn't think that if you had known the truth about your mom, that that would have changed how you felt about her. And I'm wondering, you know, obviously all these years later and weeks after the story aired, are you still unpacking the truth daily about your mom?
Yes, I am. It's I'm starting to realize that this is real. It really did happen, and that just thinking about her thoughts of when knowing that she was very, very sick and ill, concerned, because her concern for having an abortion was because of her kids and she couldn't afford it. So now she's sick and dying, so it just changed the narrative where I can't imagine what she was thinking and or feeling at the time. You know, I'm sure it was, oh my God, what did I do? You know, but yeah.
But at the time, she wasn't thinking that this would be the outcome,
Oh,
right?
no,
She was
I'm
thinking.
sure.
She was
No, I'm
thinking
sure she
as.
didn't go into it thinking that this was going to happen to her. She thought probably that, you know, it's just a process. I'll go through it and I'll be fine.
She was trying to upend the norms at the time, right? And at the time, she was a mom with 2 young children. She had you and your brother. There was a third on the way. Her marriage to your father was not doing well, and she did not want to bring another child into the world.
No, she felt very strongly about that, obviously, and that's why she made the decision she did. And I'm sure it's a hard decision to make. Sure, she gave it a lot of thought before going into the process. But
why do you think your family kept this from you for so long? What do you think about why they made up a story that was completely untrue to mask how your mother truly died?
I can only assume. I have no idea. There's no one alive that I can really ask. They all took it to their grave. So I believe it was pride.
Or shame.
Or shame. Yeah. Shame.
There was so much about the story we obviously couldn't get into in the time that we had to share the story. But I'm remembering in the interview that we did with you and with Zahara and with Aunt Millie, that Aunt Millie spends a considerable amount of time trying to talk your mom out of this decision.
Yes.
She's unable to talk her out of the decision. This tragedy occurs. You're just 9 years old, and your family blames Aunt Millie for your mother's loss. And she's lived with that for decades and decades and decades.
Yes, she did. They blame her because, as Aunt Millie said, she was older and she had 5 children. So, you know, why didn't you talk sense into her and let her know that, this is not acceptable? So Aunt Millie tried, but I guess my mom had made up her mind and really thought it would be the best decision for her. And so she went along with the process. So yeah, my family was very, very upset with Emily, and didn't speak to her after that. So Emily felt really, really hurt, and she didn't really know how to let me know. But her daughter said, "Mom, you need to let Elle know your secret." So
And I remember you saying you had no idea what that secret was going to be, but
I
when
was
it was revealed to you, you had a reaction that was quite different than what Aunt Millie had
expected.
expected.
Yes. Um, like I told Aunt Millie, I don't know how to react because for so long it's been embedded in me that my mom died from kidney failure. So that's something I lived with for many, many years. Now knowing the truth, um, all I kept thinking about, who can I talk to confirm, what family members. So I start seeking out family members and asked them if they knew, and they were like, "Oh, no, no." They're my age. Their parents passed away. So um, my cousins that are my age, they all said that that's the only thing they knew, that she had kidney failure, and she was on dialysis. That's what they were told as well.
So you and Zahara have been walking around for decades thinking that you might have a congenital condition that could impact your kidneys all these years when doctors asked you about your family history. Zahara, when you were pregnant with your 3 children, whenever you went to the doctor, you told doctors that kidney disease ran in your family and that your mother and your grandmother passed away from kidney disease.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember, those routine questions where they ask about your family health history. And that was one that was consistently brought up. Um, and, Leslie, you asked the question, why would, this be held for so long, and why would this be held in secret? And I really try to put myself in the shoes of my grandmother, her parents, that time period when women didn't have as much agency over their bodies as they do now, where it was normal to have multiple kids because there was limited access to birth control. And this was illegal, right? So it's a legal activity that their daughter engaged in. And in particular, my grandmother, who I unfortunately never got to meet, but just thinking about the decisions that must have gone through her mind. And I think one point that's really worth clarifying, that I think often when we talk about this issue, we talk about the moral elements, and people really struggling with the moral decision. I think it's also important to think about it as an economic issue as well. And as a mother now, understanding the cost of childcare and what that entails, I can only imagine that weighed in her decision, right? And wanting to and to provide, and wanting to be all the things that we expect and we hold up in terms of motherhood. So I think that's an important part, in addition to the moral, decision I'm sure she struggled with.
I'm sure she struggled with before and afterwards.
You learned about the truth of your matriarch a couple years before the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. And in that time, you created a foundation, and its singular focus now is around the reproductive rights of Black women in particular, and providing the kind of care that Black women need. I wonder, all these years after what happened to your mom and your grandmother, are you concerned that other women might be in a similar situation now that your grandmother faced some 60 years ago, in terms of making a decision that could impact their life?
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. If you look at the legislation that's being passed, the potential for a national ban, we are definitely going backwards, not forward. So there's definitely a grave concern that there are many Gertrudes, real time getting misinformation about what their rights are and how they can, take back control over their bodies and their decisions. And it's a key reason why, we wanted to play a part in helping to ensure that folks have the information they need about the care that they seek. I know there's been several headlines. Sometimes the news only makes the most egregious of situations, but I fear greatly that there are more, and there will be more women who have this lived experience.
Zahara, I know you served on the board of Planned Parenthood for several years, and at the time, this was before you knew about your grandmother's history. You had no idea about the complicated issues around reproductive rights were more than just theoretical for your family. Have you had a chance to think a bit more about that time period and now?
Absolutely. And I think, I still do serve on the board, and the reason that this has been an issue for me even before it was personal to me is because it was very clear to me from the beginning that this is about control. This is about control. This is not about, in my opinion, morality or right or wrong or difference of opinion. It's about the ability to control women, point blank. And I've always felt fiercely that was something that should not be taken out of the control of individuals in their decisions. That we can agree or disagree, but ultimately, if we start moving in a direction as a country where individuals lose the right to control what they need to do for their own care and their own bodies, that is a dangerous slippery slope. And so I see it as fundamentally tied to core economic issues, access to all the other things that make the country that we live in really great. So I've been an advocate even before it was personal, and I continue to be.
When we talked, Zahara, you talked about how there's something to mourn when a life is not fully lived, right? So you lost a grandmother. Yael, you lost a mother at age 9. There were traditions that weren't passed down. There were stories that weren't passed down. Zahara, you don't have a memory of how your grandmother smelled or how she sounded or what she liked to eat. You are learning about your grandmother from your mom, and your mom has her memories from when she was 9, when she lost her mother. And so I wonder, when you lose the stories and the tradition and the love, there's some things that you can't rebuild, right, from that time? There's some things that are just lost.
Yeah, that's true. But you have family who have those memories and they share them with you. And so it does help a lot for me as I was growing up. My family would say certain things about my mom, or I would ask questions and they would tell me certain things about my mom. And I believe they just wasn't saying it, that it was true. You know, like, oh, your mom loved to wear heels, or your mom never wanted to wear black. She loved color, or you smile like your mom, you know, things like that. And it just make me feel even closer to her, knowing those things about her that my family shared. And sometimes I would go to my family, just ask questions um, to feel that connection with her. So, yeah, I can imagine Zahara's relationship was my grandmother. That was her great grandmother. That was her grandma, called her grandma. So, yeah.
Yeah, and that, I have, kids that are the age that mom was when her mother passed. And, to your point around what's lost, I don't even want to think about all the life, right? And that I still aspire to share with them, right? And the time that they're still here, to have that, erased and taken away. That's definitely a loss that's, we can't even, think about in terms of that impact. So um yeah.
What do you do now with Gertie's story, with her legacy? Because there are undoubtedly probably a lot of families having uncomfortable conversations. Probably some may be sharing revelations in their own family about agonizing choices that family members may have made and maybe hadn't made public or revealed to other family members at some time. And you could have kept this information to yourself and not shared it with anybody, but you have decided to share it, and you've decided to work on behalf of your grandmother and other women who may be facing choices about their reproductive health. And so what happens now? We've shared Gertie's story. You started this foundation. What do you hope that unearthing this information and sharing it with others will do?
Yeah, I would say, for one, that those conversations happen, that there's not a 50-year gap, that families have the tough conversations, that they name the elephant in the room, and they create space for that. I think that's important, to shine light on those things, and to allow people to have that space and move the conversation forward. I think if we don't, then we can all kind of close our eyes and ears as the world is really being turned backwards in terms of women's rights. I think second, our foundation was started because of our belief in Black women in particular, and what they could achieve if they're able to live their full potential. Particularly single mothers, who that was my mom's, and mothers, that was my mom's lived experience. And I think there's no better investment, personally. And so we want to continue to do that work to fund and the dreams, and also to allow Black women, particularly mothers, to live their full potential. I think that's what my grandmother wanted, for herself or for her children. And that's what we hope to continue to do with this foundation.
What do you think your mom would say about all of this, Yael? How would she feel knowing that her story is being shared widely?
I hope she is at peace and happy that I learned the truth, and for me to help as many women as possible through the foundation. I really believe that this information that was shared with me a year ago was meant, and happened at the right time. I mean, what a better time. And we definitely need to do something with this information, and that's the reason why we are going to reach out to as many women as possible that needs help.
That's the legacy you want to have in your mother's name, in your matriarch's name.
Yes.
And if people are interested in learning a bit more about the Glue Foundation, where do they go?
Gluefoundation.com. That's GLEW foundation.com.
Well, I thank you for making space for this conversation. I know that it hasn't been easy to talk about, and you're still processing it yourself and sharing this information with others and hoping that women and men have different conversations as a result of it. And I hope that we're able to keep this conversation going as the nation is having a broader conversation about reproductive rights. So I want to thank you for your time this evening. I hope that the people who've had a chance to listen tonight have learned something about your family and may have gotten some additional information about the broader conversation that informs them about where they stand or not on this particular issue. I see it as a family story. And I thank you for sharing your mother and your grandmother with us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, and I thank everybody who joined us for this conversation tonight. Again, we'll keep the story up for you, and I believe in courageous conversations, right? And sometimes courageous conversations are uncomfortable conversations, but they are necessary. So thank you for creating space for us to have this kind of conversation going forward. And I wish you both all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks everybody for joining us. And we can keep this conversation going on my Facebook page. And we can continue to talk about it even when this is over. So I'd love to know your thoughts. And if you have additional questions for Zahara and for Yael, we'll be able to get those questions to them too. Do we have any questions, by the way, Melissa? Okay. All right. Well, thank you again for joining us. Thank you, Yael and Zahara. And I hope to see you again soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye.
Take care.